You lie down on a bed of leaves. Something woven into that pile keeps the insects away, and you have no idea why. You only know your mother built it this way, and her mother before her. For most of human history, this wasn't a quirk. It was the quiet line between waking up and never waking up at all. We like to imagine ancient humans as helpless, cold, hungry, clumsy, one bad night away from death. But the truth is, stranger and far more impressive. Your ancestors survived because they were running a kind of technology you've never been taught to respect. Not metal, not machines, knowledge. Tricks passed mouth to ear across thousands of generations, each one tested against death itself. So let's look at the craziest survival methods early humans actually used. Not myths, real ones, pulled straight out of the dirt by archaeologists. Start with that bed of leaves. In a rock shelter called Sibudu Cave in South Africa, an archaeologist named Lynn Wadley uncovered something astonishing. Compressed layers of plant bedding stacked one on top of another, going back roughly 77,000 years. People had hauled in grasses and reeds to sleep on. That part isn't surprising. What's surprising is what they laid on top. The top layer was made from the leaves of a tree called Cryptocarya woodii, a kind of wild quince. Those leaves aren't random. They release chemicals that kill or repel insects, including the mosquitoes that carry malaria. Think about that. Tens of thousands of years before anyone understood germs, before anyone knew a mosquito could carry a disease, your ancestors had figured out which leaves to sleep on so the biting things would leave them alone. They couldn't explain it. They didn't need to. The people who slept on the wrong leaves got sick. The people who slept on the right ones lived to teach their children. That is survival knowledge written in bodies, not books. And there's a darker, smarter detail. At Sibudu, the bedding was sometimes burned. Wadley found layers of ash beneath fresh bedding, suggesting people periodically torched their old beds. Why would you set fire to where you sleep? To kill the pests living in it. They were sterilizing their bedding with fire. A clean bed, refreshed by burning, 77,000 years ago. Now hold that thought, because fire is about to get even more interesting. You probably think of fire as something ancient people used for warmth and cooking. It was, but some of them used it on stone. At a site called Pinnacle Point on the southern coast of South Africa, an archaeologist named Curtis Marian studied the stone tools left behind. The blades were made from a rock called silkrete, and something about them didn't add up. Silkrete in its raw state is stubborn and hard to shape. But these blades flaked cleanly, the way only heat-treated stone does. Marian and his team ran experiments and confirmed it. These humans were burying stone near or under a controlled fire, heating it slowly to a precise temperature, then letting it cool. The heat changed the rock's internal structure and made it dramatically easier to work into a sharp edge. This is roughly 70,000 years ago, and in some layers, far older. People were performing what is essentially a primitive form of engineering. They understood that fire could transform a material, not just burn it. They had to control temperature, time, and patience, with no thermometer and no written recipe. If you've ever heard that humans only got clever recently, this is your answer. The cleverness is old, almost unimaginably old. So you have beds that repel disease and stone that's been heat-forged? What about food? Here's where survival gets brutal and counterintuitive. You'd assume the great danger was starvation from not finding enough meat. Sometimes it was, but there's a stranger killer, and it has a name: protein poisoning. Hunters and explorers later called it rabbit starvation. If you eat nothing but very lean meat, with no fat, your body cannot process all that protein. You can eat and eat, feel full, and still slowly die. Your liver and kidneys can't keep up. You waste away with a belly full of food. The researcher John Speth spent much of his career studying exactly this problem in early human diets. His work shows that fat wasn't a luxury for your ancestors. It was the prize. The most valuable part of a kill wasn't the muscle everyone pictures. It was the fatty marrow inside the bones, the brain, the organs. This is why archaeologists find ancient bones cracked open lengthwise. People were smashing them to get at the grease inside. A lean animal in late winter could actually be a worse meal than no meal at all, because of the energy you'd burn trying to digest it. So picture the real strategy. Not just hunting, but hunting for fat. Choosing which animals, which seasons, which parts. Knowing that a starving deer in March might kill you slower than the cold would. That is a level of nutritional understanding most modern people don't have, held by humans with no science and no words for protein or calorie. And when the animal was dangerous or fast or too big to fight, your ancestors reached for one of the most chilling tools they ever invented: poison. In another South African shelter, Border Cave, researchers including Francesco Derrico and Lucinda Backwell examined a thin wooden stick, beautifully made, around 24,000 years old. Chemical analysis found traces of ricinoleic acid on it, a marker of castor bean poison. The stick was an applicator, a tool for smearing toxin onto the tips of arrows or darts. Sit with what that means. A small human cannot easily kill a large animal with a sharp stick. The animal is stronger, heavier, and very motivated to live. But poison changes the math. You no longer have to land a fatal blow. You only have to land a scratch, then follow the animal patiently until the toxin does the work. It's hunting by chemistry. Your ancestors had learned to harvest a plant's defenses and turn them into weapons, and they understood dosage well enough not to poison themselves while handling it. Which brings us to medicine, and to a man who died in the ice. You may have heard of Otzi, the frozen mummy found in the Alps, preserved for over 5,000 years. What's less famous is what he carried. Among his belongings were pieces of fungus. One type, tinder fungus, was almost certainly for starting fire, holding an ember and coaxing it into flame. But another was a birch fungus, sometimes called birch polypore. That one is interesting because it has antibacterial and antiparasitic properties. And here's the part that makes scientists pause. When researchers examined Otzi's gut, they found the eggs of an intestinal parasite, a whipworm. He was carrying, in his own pack, one of the few natural substances that could have helped fight exactly the kind of infection living inside him. We can't prove he knew, but it's hard not to wonder. A man, 5,000 years ago, possibly self-medicating against his own parasites with a fungus he chose to carry up a mountain. Do you see the pattern yet? None of this is luck. None of it is brute strength. Every one of these tricks is information, refined over generations, until it became as ordinary to them as a phone charger is to you. So let's reconstruct a single ancient day with all of this stitched together. You wake on bedding layered with insect-repelling leaves, your body unbitten and rested. The old bed was burned a few nights ago, so nothing crawls in the grass beneath you. You take up a blade your group shaped from heat-treated stone, an edge sharper than the raw rock could ever give. You head out not just to find any animal, but the right one, fat enough to be worth the chase. Your dart carries a smear of plant poison, so you don't need to win a fight, only to start one. And tucked away, you carry a fungus, half fire starter, half medicine, because you've learned the land gives you both. That is not the life of a helpless creature. That is the life of an expert. Now here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. You are the one who lost most of this. Every human alive once belonged to a culture that knew which leaf cured which ailment, which plant killed, which season starved you, which fungus to carry. That knowledge filled tens of thousands of years and was held in living memory, passed down by people who could not afford to be wrong. Then gradually, we traded it away. We didn't need to know the leaves anymore, so we forgot them. We didn't need to read the bones, so the knowledge died with the last person who spoke it aloud. You carry the same brain those people had, the exact same hardware, unchanged for hundreds of thousands of years. The hunter who poisoned the dart, the woman who chose the bedding, the toolmaker who tamed fire to shape stone. They were not lesser versions of you. In raw capability, they may have been your equal, and in their own world, far beyond you. So the next time someone calls our ancestors primitive, remember the bed of leaves. Remember that something in that pile kept the insects away and that they figured out why long before they could ever have explained it. They survived, not because they were strong, but because they were the cleverest creatures their world had ever seen. And that cleverness is still sitting, quietly, inside your skull right now.